The wife had just signed the divorce papers. The next second, she was shocked to discover that her husband was actually the manager of the magic pawn shop. That's right, this is a world of magic, but only a very small number of people are qualified to practice it. Among them, what ordinary humans long for the most is the magic pawn shop. It's said that as long as one pays a sufficient price at the pawn shop, they can exchange for anything they desire. And the man before her was the 9th manager of the magic pawn shop. Yet the wife beside him still didn't know that the moment she signed the divorce papers was the beginning of her life of misery. It all began a few days earlier. A crippled and blind man was drinking water at home. The next second, the secretary of the magic pawn shop suddenly appeared in the living room. With a light spell from the secretary, the man's legs and eyes immediately returned to normal. This time, the secretary had come to once again invite the man to take charge of the magic pawn shop. But the man was hesitant. Only because he still had a wife he couldn't leave behind. He told the secretary he would give her an answer in 3 days. So the secretary had no choice but to leave. But what the man did not expect was, after regaining his sight, he accidentally discovered that his wife had a lover outside. The man was heartbroken. At this moment, he deeply regretted his past decision. It turned out that many years ago, the previous manager had wanted to appoint him as the manager of the magic pawn shop. But at that time, he couldn't stop worrying about his wife, who was starting a business on her own. So he temporarily gave up inheriting the role of manager. He even used his manager's privilege to trade his legs for his wife's good health, and his eyes for his wife's business success. And to prevent his wife from feeling guilty, he never told her about what he had done, but unexpectedly, his wife betrayed him. With nothing left to hold on to, the man immediately summoned the secretary. He decided to take up the position of manager of the magic pawn shop. With just a wave of the secretary's hand, several magical scrolls suddenly appeared in the air. They were the magical contracts the man had signed in the past. As soon as the man declared the contract ended, his eyes and legs would be permanently restored. But in exchange, his wife's body would return to its original frail condition, and her company would no longer prosper as before. The man casually used a fire spell, and the contract instantly vanished. The secretary smiled slightly. She once again cast a spell and produced the manager's appointment letter. The man signed his own name. The next second, the magical appointment letter flew before the wealthy and noble families. It proudly announced to everyone that the 9th manager of the magic pawn shop had officially taken his place. The crowd immediately became extremely excited. They decided on the spot to visit the manager that very afternoon. Meanwhile, the wife received the news at home that they would go to the magic pawn shop in the afternoon. She excitedly shared the news with her lover. The lover also cooperated eagerly with her. He passionately promised to give up 1 day of his life in exchange for her good health. The wife was actually very moved. Just then, the man suddenly came down the stairs. He pretended to be blind and asked his wife for some water. The wife was about to pour him a glass but was stopped by her lover. The lover wanted to mock the man cruelly, so he poured a cup of scalding hot water and handed it to him. Little did he know, the man's sight had long since returned. The man pretended that his hand was shaking and deliberately spilled the hot water onto the lover's hand. The lover screamed out in pain. The man immediately asked his wife why there was another man's voice in their home. The wife panicked instantly. She hurriedly explained that the lover was just her assistant, who had just come to report work to her. Outwardly, the man pretended to believe her, but inwardly he mocked her poor excuse. The ignorant wife breathed a sigh of relief. She told the man they were going to the magic pawn shop that afternoon, but she didn't know that the man standing before her was the manager himself. That afternoon, the wife brought her lover to the magic pawn shop. By then, many wealthy people and nobles had already gathered inside. They were all there to trade with the manager of the pawn shop, and Smith, the CEO of Company A, worth tens of billions, recognized the wife immediately. It turned out that many years ago, the secretary of the pawn shop had suddenly approached him, asking him to invest $100 million in the wife's company, and at that time, the magic pawn shop wasn't even open. Smith immediately assumed that the wife must be close friends with the manager. He flattered her warmly, not knowing that the manager himself had already severed ties with her. Just then, the secretary of the pawn shop suddenly came out. She solemnly introduced the manager to everyone. Then, under everyone's expectant gaze, the man casually walked down the stairs. The wealthy men were full of doubt. The man before them looked like a poor beggar. Was he really the manager? The wife at the side was even more shocked. Not only had the man regained his sight, but he had also mysteriously appeared at this grand occasion. The wife immediately wanted to drive him away, but the man pushed her aside. The wife was furious. She threatened that if he didn't leave right away, she would divorce him, but the man was already prepared. He immediately took out the divorce papers. As long as she signed them, their marriage would end instantly. The wife decisively agreed to his request. She was rich and beautiful, and had a caring lover. She wasn't afraid of losing her husband at all, but the very second she signed, her body immediately became frail again. At that moment, everything the man had once given his wife was now completely taken back. The man pushed aside his wife and her lover blocking his way, and gracefully put on the manager's magical robe. No one present dared to question his identity anymore.